you're a frog in a pot. What will you do when the water gets hot? Will you jump out or will you get cooked? Listen to the show and you will be hooked.
Welcome to Boil the Frog Slowly, a radio program that answers the question, are politics hazardous to your health? We go where mainstream media stops. Co-hosted by Sebastian Sanzota, a marathon runner, a vegetarian, a former healthcare professional with 5 years of military experience in the U.S. Navy, including 2 tours in the Persian Gulf, primarily working with advanced airborne early warning radar aircraft. Sebastian is experiencing firsthand the ill effects of EMFs. He is passionate to share his medical background, experience, and research in an effort to educate and save others from boiling in this hot health war soup. And co-hosted by me, Pat Rouleau, author of Speak Up and Stay Alive, the Patient Advocate Hospital Survival Guide, and host-producer of the nationally syndicated radio show, Speak Up and Stay Alive Patient Safety Radio, heard on 220 radio and cable television stations throughout the country. The books and archive shows are available at speakupandstayalive.com. I too have been slowly and unknowingly boiled by hidden EMF hazards and have jumped out of the pot to tell all. You can listen to all previous and current Boil the Frog programs at boilthefrogradio.com, at iHeartRadio, and on our very own internet radio station, speakuptalkradio.com. I encourage you to share this program with as many people as you possibly can, week after week, as we gig out some of the leading issues we face today to help you understand, function, and ultimately survive in today's toxic environment proliferated by big money. Thank you for joining us as we jump out of the pot. Sebastian, I love this time of day with you.
Me too, Pat.
We've got a great guest. We have Floyd Maxwell. Let me tell you a bit. He was born and raised in beautiful British Columbia in Canada. Trained as a chemical engineer, he got much more interested in computers in 1983, and he switched over to that. And he has several very interesting websites, and actually I spent quite a bit of time on his one site, just-think-it.com, justthinkit.com. And thanks to his father, Floyd has had a love of quotes all his life and has been collecting only the good ones for years now. So when the internet came along, he started sending out 9 quotes per day to an ever-increasing number of his friends and did this for 2 years before creating 3 websites. And 15 years and 30,000 quotations later, all 3 publications continue to be offered free to all. So I'd call him a philosopher, and he has much to say. So let's get going. Welcome to the show, Floyd.
Welcome, Floyd.
Well, thank you. Nice to be here.
Well, I so enjoyed your quotes, and I'm now calling them Floydisms, if that's all right.
Sure.
Here's a Floydism I'd like to start with. You said that you can lead a person to philosophy, but you can't make them think. And that kind of reminded me of you could lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. And then I thought, well, that could be a very cool country song. Or it could be a statement that defines the masses who are so easily, they do nothing about the hazards associated with cell phones, smart meters, chemtrails, mandatory vaccines, fluoridation of our water, government spying, big pharma, GMO foods, and on and on and on. So you wrote the quote, and I'd like to know, where does that take you today?
Well, that quote was from some time back, so fundamentally it hasn't changed, right? The truth doesn't change. That's the frustration when you try and share something with someone else. You know, you're really trying to do them a favor. It doesn't matter what it's about, and it's understandable when a 2-year-old cries when you try and help them not eat a candy bar and eat a carrot instead. But when grown-ups are like that, that's a whole new level of challenge. And it's probably always been that way, but that's our challenge. Whether, like you say, whether it's GMOs, vaccines, fluoridation, microwave radiation, it's all the same. The big message is a lie, and so the smaller message is the truth, and there we are. We're trying to distribute the truth in a small way from the ground up, and a lot of horses have been led, but there's still plenty of water to be drunk.
Right. And you also say, another Floydism, is that once you realize the system is rotten, you see rot everywhere. Let's talk about your favorite rotten situation today. What might that be?
Well, I guess the nice thing is, as you start to get a better understanding, is you start to see the whole picture, and you're able to put things in perspective. So for example, my perspective changed in the last couple of years. Once I found out about microwave radiation, prior to that, I always felt the biggest threat was fluoridation. That was the biggest assault on the individual. And now I think they found something better. And I think, honestly, they're really happy. And I think it's going to produce some very dramatic, massive results like we have never seen on the face of this earth before. I'm a true pessimist when it comes to microwave radiation.
And why is that?
Why is that? I guess it's from having experienced it personally. I guess it's from not being blindsided by it. Until 2 years ago, I didn't even know about it. Someone, just a chance mention on a forum on the internet, mentioned the documentary that you guys also talk about, Resonance Beings of Frequency, and just by a fluke, I went there and watched it, and then I was like, whoa. It got my attention. I thought I need to buy a meter so I can do measurements. I buy a meter, and then I realized the problem is right at home. And I had been dying. I was literally dying in my own home. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't dream. I couldn't rebuild. I'd wake up and I feel like an 80-year-old person. And you count on your morning cup of coffee, and then you still feel bad. And I just went, well, that's my lot in life, and that's what everyone is doing. No matter what they have got, no matter where they got it given to them, people just tend to accept it. And sometimes you need a prod, or sometimes you need a lucky fluke. I feel I was extremely lucky that some anonymous person online just mentioned resonance beings and frequency. And so even though I have my own videos on microwave radiation, I still mention that documentary. It's sort of close to my heart because that's what reached me.
It's amazing, Floyd. Some people are like dry kindling. All it takes is one little spark and they just go up in flames, and then I can't even tell you how many people I've recommended that video to, and they won't even watch it, and here all it took is one little spark for you, and you did what it took to educate yourself and become completely aware on the issue. What's it going to take to get other people to be open to what's really happening to them?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. We're so much against the tides on this one. It's not funny. One of the things I offer to do is I offer to just provide measurements for people. I just take my meter to their house and just start measuring their house. And with one family, they had children. Turned out their house was aluminum siding, and they were very near where I live here, so they were very near this large building that had many masts on top of it. They were really being hit. Well, the aluminum siding was protecting their house, but in their picture window, their living room window, it was just regular glass. And when you drew an arrow from the source of the radiation through the window, it went right to where the kids played every day. They were getting radiated right where they hung out most of the time. Mm-hmm. And you could show it with the meter. And believe me, this family acted very fast. They got the aluminum mesh, they shielded the front of their house. It's a rental. And I went back later and I was like, yeah, you guys are good. Well, they realized they can't even play in the yard. Mm-hmm. The kids can't even play in the yard. Mm-hmm. And so they moved. So you can get quick results, I think, person to person with a meter. I don't charge for it, and people know that. But still, it's like the documentary. I've talked to many people in this neighborhood, and you get no results.
Yeah, you can show people what's happening on the meter, and they just ignore it. They don't care. They don't feel it, so they don't think they need to do anything about it. Now, with the people you're talking about, did their children actually have symptoms? What was it that made them understand and grasp what you were saying was an actual hazard?
Right, a good question. I think what had happened earlier was I went and distributed flyers in the area. We did 50 of those, 50 houses. And so it told our story in about one page, and the meter readings and everything else. And I had my phone number, and I said, hey, I'm willing to come over to your house and show you, what's going on. So they were warmed up by that. And actually, what had happened was the guy who works locally here, he showed up on my front porch here one day and was like, hey, yeah, about that flyer you handed out. So that's what started it. That's what got them receptive to me when I went over there. The other thing I would add is, This family was a very has a high moral ground. They're trying very hard. They're very sincere. They also had, for example, they were starting to take magnesium. sort of a pure magnesium product, and you spray it, and it goes onto your skin, and you can absorb it through your skin. We just don't get enough magnesium, and even in our multivitamins, etc. And so I started doing that as well, just based on me meeting them. So I guess what it was in their case is they were, a more receptive family, and you need that. You're not going to reach everybody. Sadly, you're not going to reach everybody.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case. It's sad. I mean, we'd like to just have everybody wake up on this, but it's obviously not happening. Floyd, when you mentioned the aluminum mesh screen shielding, can you go into more detail on how you do that to effectively shield from the microwaves?
Yeah. What started me on that, by the way, is when you go to these EMF shops and whatnot online, you realize the materials are all prohibitively expensive. And so I just literally went to Google and asked Google, what is the cheapest shielding? And that's when the mosquito netting hits came up. So basically, mosquito netting is aluminum wire and a mesh, as we call it, but it's aluminum wires. And they're spaced maybe a millimeter apart, or let's call it a 1/16 of an inch apart. They're spaced really close together. And it turns out that corresponds with the frequency of microwave radiation. It corresponds with the frequency of Wi-Fi. And so it's effectively like it's aluminum foil, or it's effectively like a wall of metal. Well, the nice thing is you can see through it. The nice thing is when you put it on your windows, people are like, yeah, you got mosquito netting on your windows, that's no big deal. Well, that's how I started using it. So I shielded our windows. Just, it just shows how stupid I was. I shielded the windows on two sides here and thought, that should be about it. And it was an improvement. We had a bad case here. Our levels were 600 to 1,000 times higher than recommended. If you go just 3 blocks further away from the towers than we are, I've measured other people's homes, and they have like vanishingly small numbers. So these towers are selectively nuking us when we live really close. Let's say within 2 or 3 blocks of a tower. And of course, sometimes you don't know where the towers are. They're in the chimney of a church, for example. But anyway, so I did a progressive process of shielding in this home. I got very, very serious about it. It became sort of a point of pride, and it's safe to say I put my maximum effort into it. And so I started recording with my meter using masking tape and putting little notes down, and I read the exact reading and even like how many foot off the ground was I reading it from and everything else. And I was generally looking for the highest readings in a given spot, because obviously that's, the worst case scenario. And then I would do more shielding, and then I would come back and I would measure and record those notes. And then I would do more shielding, and I repeated that process. Well, I got to the point where I had done the two vertical walls of this outside of this home, except for the chimney area, and I still wasn't done yet. It was still 200 times higher than healthy. And that's when, it just really starts to get to you, and you're just like, hey, I told you to leave.
Right.
And so then I realized, you start sort of drawing an imaginary line, because this stuff, goes in a straight line, and we are lower than the cell phone towers. And so it was coming down through the roof, through the ceiling. And so then I shielded the entire attic of this home. So this is laying down the mesh in the attic. And all of this might sound like a big investment. Well, my total investment, counting everything, is about $1,000.
And where did you buy it?
Where'd you get this?
Yeah, I went to Lowe's. I went to a hardware store, and you can just buy a 4-foot wide sheet of it, 25 feet long, for I forget the price, but maybe $25 or something like that. And I think I bought probably 20 of those eventually.
And it's just called mosquito netting?
Yeah, aluminum netting. Now you got to watch out. Some of it is plastic.
Okay. Yeah.
Is this like the aluminum screen that goes in windows?
It is exactly like that. And there's 2 kinds at Lowe's anyway. There was what looks like aluminum, looks like a dull metal look, and then there's carbon coated. So it's like a black mesh.
Yes.
So you can sort of suit the one, like for example, we have white walls outside, so I use the white colored mesh for that. And then I also bought black simply because I ran out. I drained their supplies.
So basically, if you were screening an outdoor porch, that's what you would be using, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly like that.
Okay.
And only you have to overlap.
Yeah.
You overlap the posts, you overlap everything. You trust nothing. Rocks, meaningless to this. It goes right through. Eventually, I had to shield the chimney, and if I had shielded the chimney on the outside, it would have looked really bizarre. And so I shielded it on the inside. I made up a little rig, and I'm looking right now inside my living room at this mesh over the chimney. And so we have a shielded chimney on the inside of our house.
Okay.
And do you have to ground that mesh?
No, that made no difference in my readings, and different people give different advice. It made no difference. I think with RF or the different frequency, like the power line, if you're trying to mask power line influences, I think you might have to ground. But I do not believe that you need to do it with microwaves with Wi-Fi.
I'm glad you mentioned power lines, because I wanted to ask you if you've looked into the noise that's traveling into our homes on the power lines, and how tainted the power grid is becoming as we speak. I mean, it's getting really bad. I'm kind of working on 3 homes at the moment, and all of them have increasing noise coming in on the wires, and RF is traveling on them. Plus, dirty electricity is, as they implement the smart grid, the dirty electricity just gets worse and worse. And the cell towers cause dirty electricity too, depending on how close you live to one.
Right.
So I'm wondering, are you noticing this where you're located with problems of noise coming in on the power grid?
Okay, well, as it happens, we got like the 12,000 volt line right outside of our house, and it's the poles are right on the edge of our property. So we are close to that. But what I notice is that ever since we shielded just the microwave radiation, it completely changed our lives. So for me personally, it's just my intuition on it. I think it's a lesser problem. I'm not saying it's no problem, and some people are very sensitive. And for example, I had a friend when we first started with computers, and we'd buy floppy disks at that time. Well, if he handled those disks, half of them would die. He's probably the kind of guy that if he wore a watch, he'd break the watch. Like some people are just electrically different than others.
Yeah.
And so for me personally, I guess I have a lack of experience, and my meter also doesn't measure those frequencies. It's only for the microwave radiation.
Right. I want to comment on that for those folks that are listening. When you're talking about shielding, and anytime you do any kind of shielding, you really do need to have a quality meter so that you can make sure you're not making the problem worse instead of mitigating it. So yeah, you had a meter, and I just want to make sure everyone realizes that they do need a meter if you do any kind of shield work.
It's very true. You can make it worse. Maybe think of it like you're trying to keep wild bulls, wild steers out of your property, and if you fence part of your property, you could end up, the steers could, be trapped inside your property, or some analogy like that. You got to be careful. You got to give it an out if it's still getting in.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. Now, let's say you aluminum mesh an entire enclosed room, but you leave your plug outlets and your light fixtures open. This stuff is traveling right in on the wires. So what would happen there?
Well, the thing is, you can measure local, you can get right down to that plug and measure that. And so, you can make a sort of a command decision. You can make an exception, or you can come up with a sort of a plan B of how you could deal with it. Here's an example. Let's say it was still a problem of noise from the outlet, but you wanted to plug into it. You could build a shield. Say you have a desk in front of it. You could shield the back of the desk so that you could still plug wires in behind the desk, but the desk would be acting as a shield between the plug and you.
So it's kind of like a straight line as far as the trajectory on this radiation. Can it come out and can it bounce around a few times, or does it just travel in a straight line?
It can. There are materials that, like metal will let it bounce. There are materials that are designed to absorb it, and that's probably why, some of these materials cost more money. They're designed to actually absorb it, turn it into, I think, basically heat.
Is that what the aluminum mesh does?
No, it just stops it. It's like a wall, a true wall.
Okay.
Would that be similar to the foil?
Right. I think in new construction, you can get materials that have already got some foil of some kind on them. And I think that's what some people are doing is, when they renovate or when they buy a home or when they build a home, they shield the drywall or whatever, and so everything is all shielded in the first place.
That's interesting. We have an RV when we travel, and we sleep in it at night, and so I have all of this rolls of foil and Velcro up on the wall. So at night, whenever you pull in anywhere, there's all the RF from the cell towers around, and so I foil the whole enclosure. Now I'm thinking about the aluminum mesh and see if that might be a better way to work.
The nice thing is with that is you can see through it.
Yeah.
You know, that's sort of a not to be ignored factor. Also, I think it's stronger. It is wire. It's like, the foil can crinkle.
Yes.
And we have some foil in our bedroom. It's sort of historic at this point, but we have some on the window in the bedroom. And sometimes, I guess, this is a 90-year-old house. Sometimes wind gets in there.
Tell me about
it.
it.
Hear the foil kind of crinkling in the wind. So.
Me too.
So are you saying you actually lined the inside walls of your house with the aluminum screen?
When it came to the fireplace, because I didn't want to sort of put something on the outside that would make us the laughing stock. We're almost the laughing stock of the neighborhood, but I didn't want to be completely the laughing stock.
So did you line the outside with the aluminum mesh then?
Yes, everywhere else. And of course, this is, people notice this. You see people stopping and staring and looking at it. We left up a notice on one of the power poles near our house to explain what we did, and that was up for like 3 or 4 months. And then eventually, someone from the building where all this radiation is coming from, someone from there obviously got mad and they tore it down.
Boy, that's a great statement, Floyd. God bless you.
Wow.
I'm just the type to be head on about this. Like,
yeah.
When I told neighbors, they were like, "Well, we got to go to the home, and we got to." And I tried going to the home. Exactly nothing happened. And then I was like, "It's time for Plan B." It was done as fast as I could do it.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm imagining somebody building like this structure, just this giant cage, and then pop it over a home.
I had that exact thought, Pat. My thought was to put like poles on the perimeter of the property.
Yep, that's what I was wondering.
Because I want when I'm outside in the grass, I want that shielded too. Right?
Yep.
Greedy that way.
Yard.
Yep.
And so you have these poles that maybe are 15 feet high, and then you run the mesh on them. And by the way, you would use the least mesh that way.
Yeah, because there's no twists and turns of the house. Yeah.
Cheap, fast, and a complete solution, and totally would freak out everybody.
That's awesome.
What about chicken wire? Because I've had these same thoughts through my head. I'm thinking like if you were out in your yard, what if let's say you had a wooded lot? Could you drop walls of chicken wire mesh and make a wall with that outside, like through your woods? So would that effectively block microwave radiation?
Okay, well, chicken wire is largely porous. It's largely not there, if you will. It's like a giant honeycomb. Let's say the gap between each piece of wire is, say, almost an inch. So you're not going to shield with that wire. But what you could do is that wire could be the carrier for your mosquito netting.
Yeah, that's a good
And
idea.
it would give strength to the mosquito netting. It would be stronger than the netting.
Yep. Great idea.
I see Sebastian's wheels turning here. I see a giant structure coming along, folks.
Well, I want yard too. I've been trying to come up with a way to protect the yard, not just the house. But Floyd, not to rain on the parade here, but just to keep it real. I mean, they've got satellites up there now, and they're going to have hundreds more, and drones flying around, and that's coming. So we're going to be microwaved more from the sky in the future. So that means we're going to have to think about what's up above us.
I am, and I've actually shielded almost the entirety of the attic already, so I'm maybe ahead of the game there. But yes, I honestly think the reason they're going to go to the sky is so that they can dose us all evenly, so that we're all the same distance from the source. Right now, it's a factor of 1 million. The people that are within a block of the source are 1 million times more dosed than the people a mile or two away. It's a huge, huge difference. They know that, and they know that that leaves them vulnerable. We can point the finger and go, look at this curve of the illnesses and how close you are to the source. So if they change the source so that we're all the same distance from it, we're all on the ground, it's in the air, they're happy with that. So yes, I would encourage anyone who's going to the trouble of doing this, shield your attic. I mean, who uses the attic? I did much of mine on the actual inner roof of the attic, and only in a few places was it more practical to do it on the sort of the flat part of the attic. And so if I was using my attic for storage, I would still have access to that storage.
That's a great idea. You know, Floyd, speaking of the skies, we've been noticing this. These Cessna airplanes are flying by constantly, and they're those dirt boxes where they are posing as cell towers and now tricking people's phones into connecting to the airplane so that they can monitor whatever it is they're monitoring. I don't know if it's law enforcement or just general spying, but I have an acoustimeter as well, and every time I hear one go by sitting in my office, I turn the meter on, and all of a sudden it jumps and it spikes. So obviously they're radiating us, with these flying cell towers. Have you heard about this, or do you know much about that?
Well, I mean, you're quite right. They do have these sort of fake cell towers. I want to say the operation is called Stingray. I may be wrong on that.
It is.
Okay. So, yes, they're doing this. It's fine. The excuse is to catch the bad guys or whatever, to dupe them. But, yeah, when they start irradiating us all because of this, that's not cool. And you're right. It's another good reason to shield the roof of your house.
By the way, I just recently read that they can tap into, if you have wireless capability on your computer, they can literally scan your hard drive right from that airplane.
It's a great reason to not use wireless inside your house for, your cordless keyboard or whatever. And I gave up on those things decades ago because of the security issues. So, it just shows that convenience comes at a massive cost.
Yes, it does. Floyd, what about going back to shielding your house with your windows and that screen? How are you effectively doing that? I mean, obviously, you're probably going to lose the ability to open and close your windows, right?
Right.
Okay.
We've done it only on two sides because that was where the cannons were firing from. So as it happened, I don't think we had a single, I'm just sort of looking around, we never had a single window that we opened anyway on those two sides. But yes, that would be a consequence. And I think that people need to realize, and, this is in the category of lifestyle change. You may have to move. That may absolutely be the very best thing you can do. In our case here, we're sort of limited finances, and so that wasn't really an option. We have a sort of a better than average, deal because the landlord is related. And so, it's not economically feasible for us to move. But honestly, I really did consider it. And if anyone has the economic means to move away from being too close to a source, I would absolutely encourage it.
Yeah, and the thing is, and people have to really look at their power grid situation as well. They've got to look at those wires. My parents moved from their home of 28 years because of what we're talking about here. They had two cell towers on either side of them, a quarter mile away. And the house they moved to seemed like it was better for the cell towers, but a year and a half later, what we're realizing is their power grid is horrible. And we literally had an electrician pull their service meter off the house, so there was no physical electrical connection. And I used our RF meter, and it was off the charts just from their wires in their home. Their wires were lit up with RF frequencies with the electric meter physically removed off the house.
Amazing.
So you could encase the whole house in mesh, and you're still going to be blasted off your wires because it's traveling in, and it'll even jump across the gap where the meter was on the service. So it's complicated.
It is complicated, and what I would say to people is that with something like fluoridation or fluoride toothpaste, if you cut out fluoride toothpaste, it's a pure net gain. Right. Very simple. If you stop drinking fluoridated water, it's a pure net gain. Simple. Yeah. This is very sophisticated, very, very complicated, and yet all you have to do is buy an acoustimeter or equivalently good quality meter, and now you can start measuring for yourself. And as soon as you start measuring and realizing, think of it like you're being shot at, and when the readings are high, they're shooting a lot of bullets. And now you can systematically start working on that problem. In the case of RF, it is different again, and you need more of the electrical contractor type mindset. So you need a professional to come in and provide more grounds, I'm sure, and shielding and grounds probably.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, Floyd, when you said you put the flyers out, I think that's a great idea, to your neighbors and said you'd come out for free. Have you given any consideration to schools? And what do you think the reception would be that way?
Well, I don't know if you've seen it. I watched the video. It was in Canada, and a guy was appearing before a school board. and it was quite a long, good video. And you just realize the level of corruption is truly everywhere. How do you control people? You make sure they're so dirt poor that they're desperate.
Yes.
And then you offer them a bit of money if.
Yep.
And so, the problem with putting towers up near schools is I bet you the school gets a kickback.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it's like this is a retirement home near where I live here, and they have probably 3 or 4 times as many cell phone towers on top of their building as normal. And I bet you they make a lot.
They're getting $2,000 to $3,000 a month from the telecom company for having the tower on their property.
Someone's getting rich and living in Hawaii because of it, and so they're not going to change. And that's why you have to have a more defensive mindset where you have to protect yourself. No one around you is going to change. You have to change.
Floyd, I'm going to recommend to our listeners they go to YouTube and watch your 2-part video, Microwaves, Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. It's just fabulous. That's how I became aware of you. Is I found one of those videos and then I watched the second part. And what really impressed me about you, Floyd, is you're just an average citizen like myself. You became aware of a problem, and in that 2-part series, I could see the evolution of you becoming aware. You were figuring out things on your own. There were things in part 1 that you thought were safe, and then when you did part 2, you said, no, I was wrong. That's not safe. And I just thought, I wish that everybody could be like that. Just use their brain and figure stuff out on their own. It's just amazing. Like microwave ovens, for example. In part 1, you thought they were okay, and then part 2, you realized, no, they're not.
Right. And my reasoning there was, at first I was thinking, well, we won't use it as much, and when we would, for a while there, we would start the microwave and we'd yell out to everyone else in the household, fire in the hole, and then we would leave the room and go to another room. And I was in the living room right next to the kitchen, and I measured, and everything was, quite good, or, even in hindsight, it probably wasn't quite good, but it was okay. Well, I was right behind a refrigerator. We have a refrigerator in our living room as well, and I was right behind it. So I was getting like an unfair, amount of shielding from it. And then just after a while, it just niggles you, and you just realize, why do you have any of this stuff in your house?
Yeah.
And a microwave oven, I think, it can kill you. If a technician opens up a microwave oven to work on it, and they turn it on while it's opened up, they will die. It will flat out kill them, and it's happened. So, yes, a microwave oven is shielded. It's made out of metal. It's got shielded glass in the front. And still, when you put a meter up to it, it is horrifying how high the radiation is coming off of it. And it shows that some of that radiation cannot be shielded. And at first I considered shielding the wall between me and the microwave in the kitchen and everything. And then I was just like, hey, we got to get rid of this thing.
Yeah.
Then you consider what it does to your food and the nutritional value of your food. I'm like, why bother? I mean, you're killing yourself just if you're not getting the RF, you're eating the tainted food.
Right. Like I say in the segment, I believe I say, if microwave popcorn is your only reason for keeping a microwave oven, you have no reason to keep one.
Exactly.
Change your diet, change your lifestyle, and be done with it, kind of thing.
Wow. So it's not just you. Your family experienced symptoms as well?
Well, the biggest symptom, both my wife and I, we now sleep immeasurably better. Neither of us slept deeply before. Whenever either of us got up to, use the bathroom in the middle of the night, we always woke up the other person. I would get like 4 hours sleep a night, sometimes even less, and get up and just feel just horrible. My eyes bother me and everything. Also, if I may speak for my wife, her breathing has changed and deepened. When I first met her, she was in this home, and she had been living under this, attack, and she had very shallow breathing. And now she saws logs when she sleeps. She is that's your body. You can't fake it when you're sleeping.
No.
And her body is telling me every night that she is sleeping way better. And when you sleep way better, you feel way better in the morning. You have more energy, you rebuild, etc.
Yeah. And just to keep this in the right perspective for our listeners, we're talking right now to someone who has a cell tower over their home. It's obviously built in a residential area. There are probably a lot of homes right under that tower. And I mean, this has happened. This is all over the world. It's like this. Now, let's just speak for the United States here. I can go 10 miles in any direction and just see that everywhere. I mean, they are building these towers right in people's backyards, right over condominium communities, right over entire neighborhoods. They're just right over the homes. Now, common sense tells you, if you want to find out if those are causing problems, you have to do some epidemiology studies. I mean, which is really stupid because that should be done before the towers are installed over the neighborhoods. But at the very least, I mean, if you're concerned about it being hazardous, you would spend some money, some tax money, and fund some epidemiology studies to see if there are indeed any clusters of physical reactions. And Floyd, to your knowledge, is any of that being done here in the U.S.?
No, not at all. Really the opposite. One of the interesting things is in the U.S. they have a requirement, a standard about how heavy the radiation can be when people are around. We'll just say the number 10,000 is the number that it has to be under that level. Well, it's not being enforced. And I think there's been a total of one case ever where someone was able to push through the court system and get a cell phone company to actually fix the problem. It's literally impossible to fix the problem, even when you tell the FCC. And they have a nice little complaint line, and you can complain, and absolutely nothing will happen.
And yet in France and Taiwan, they seem to be beginning to take some notice. And you would think that if they're taking notice, the problem is probably worse than anyone really imagines, if they are taking the kind of steps that they're taking now. And I wish the United States would follow their lead.
Well, for sure. I mean, for that matter, it mirrors the situation with fluoridation. The United States is, I think, one of the largest, if not the largest country in the world that's fluoridated. 2/3 of Americans are fluoridated. And, you know, any kind of an investigation of the toxicity of fluoride, and you realize this shouldn't be happening. This is ludicrous. This makes no sense whatsoever on any level. And yet, you know, again, someone's making some money off of this. Some aluminum manufacturers and fertilizer manufacturers, they have a waste product that they used to have to pay to get rid of it, and now they can add it to the water supply, that waste product, and we drink that waste product, and everybody's happy apparently.
And then you got controlling the minds of the American Dental Association that endorses that. I mean, come on.
Right. And of course, dentists, I did some research on that. The average dentist takes between 0 and 1 courses in chemistry as part of their degree. How can they possibly be, I apologize for the noise in the background, by the way, they're working on the sewer lines. They've been there for several months. Anyway, how can a dentist possibly be dispensing chemicals and sort of profess to be knowledgeable about it when they take a grand total of 1 chemistry course ever?
Well, aren't they guided by the American Dental Association, who's kind of in bed with this whole situation?
Sure, that's what ends up happening. All those, you know, the weak people, they just they're guided by each other, right? They all blow together, they all sway together, and everyone is guided by everybody else when it comes to fluoridation, which is to say, you know, there's just no wisdom there. They're all lying together. They're all selling out together.
Why don't you give us just a quick brief synopsis on the root history of fluoridation? How did it come to be?
Right. Well, really the first use of fluoride that was like a super important use of it was in World War II, where they wanted to separate uranium. There's 2 types of uranium, the atom, and one of them was radioactive and useful to them to make bombs, and one of them wasn't useful. And so it turns out that separating them is very difficult. Their mass is only different by about 1%. And they converted the uranium to uranium hexafluoride by bonding 6 fluorides to it, and then it turned it into a gas. And then they created these giant tunnels, diffusion tunnels, and they sent the gas, you know, sort of very slowly down the tunnel, and gradually the heavier one would sink and the lighter one would rise. And so it was one of the processes in the war to separate and to get their bomb-grade uranium. Well, even at that time, the health effects, the workers, their teeth were turning to black stumps. It was unbelievable. And even just managing and handling this product, it was so toxic and so corrosive. This is where Teflon and Teflon coating and Teflon, sort of methods evolved, was just even to handle it. Well, I don't know when the light bulb went off for somebody, but you know, Michigan, I think in the 50s, was the first city where they started fluoridating the water. But that was really, again, just to deal with a toxic waste product and you know, lie to the public and then say it's good for you. And it's been going like that really ever since, almost without change. you know, they used to have to pay, I think it was $2,000 a ton to dispose of the toxic fluoride, which is a byproduct of when you create aluminum in a smelter, you release a lot more fluoride than you do aluminum. And so you have a massive waste product. And it's the same with fertilizer. So it's a double whammy. Big companies get rich while they pollute the landscape, kill the cows with the fluoride rain, and then they add it to our water supply so that we all, you know, get this toxic effect. And again, as my background as a chemical engineer, you know which chemicals are toxic, and you know their properties. And fluoride is the most reactive element there is in the entire periodic table. When you drink something with fluoride, free fluoride in it, it's going to do whatever it wants in your body. You cannot possibly say, please only go to my teeth. And so the scale of this lie was something that caused me to get into this field 30 years ago.
What are some of the things that it does in the body?
Well, when something is super reactive, it's literally that process of being able to do whatever it wants that's bad. It can change any part of your body. When it chemically reacts with anything in your body, whether it's bones, tissue, your eyes, your brain, anything, it will now change those cells. So I would imagine it can lead to cancers. It can, I'm not a biologist, and so I don't know the sort of the full ramifications, but it's toxic. It's a poison. It's a killer, and so you're drinking a killer.
Does it retain in your body after you drink? I know they're giving us this micron-size amounts in each cup of water, but does your body pass it out, or does it stay in the body?
The fundamental problem with fluoride is that the size of the atom, it's the same size as the water molecule. So when you drink it, it can go wherever water can go in your body. Similarly, the way your body excretes toxins through the urine process is it uses a filter, it uses a mesh. And so the fluoride is the same size as water. So the mesh is designed for things bigger than water. The water passes through, you keep that. The bad things don't pass through, you excrete those. Well, then the fluoride passes through the filter. And so what happens is your body excretes about the same amount of fluoride, half, as it excretes water, about half. And so half of it accumulates. That's the answer.
Mm-hmm. Do you know Professor or Dr. Paul Connett?
Yeah, he's a very well-known person, perhaps the most well-known person
Yeah.
faced the earth to do with the fluoridation problem, yes.
I interviewed him a couple times for my Speak Up and Stay Alive program and thought that was quite enlightening.
By the way, I'd like to compliment you, Pat. I did listen to one of your shows of your own radio show, and I just think you're really professional and knowledgeable. Both of you come across that way. It can sound like I'm just, saying this because it's good for both of us, but I really sincerely mean it. I think you guys know what you're talking about. I think you know your subjects. And, for me personally, honesty is everything. Mm-hmm. This is a battle of honesty versus dishonesty.
Yeah.
And it's a battle of information versus disinformation. And so it behooves all of us to know our subject and to be honest and hang the consequences. If it changes who you hang out with, I have no problem with that.
Exactly.
I really don't.
Yep. We're hanging out with ourselves.
Yeah, I kind of noticed that the friends kind of dispersed as I gained more knowledge.
Yeah, and if you climb a mountain and you're at the top, there's not a lot of people at the top of the mountain because it takes work.
Yeah.
But they don't have the view.
Mm-hmm. That's a good way of putting it, Floyd.
Thank you. Thank you for the nice compliment.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate
and same
that.
to you. You obviously know what you're talking
Yeah.
about. We're very happy to have you today.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I really feel bad for people that they don't have a meter in front of them.
Yeah.
I turn mine on, even in my own home periodically, just to go, has something new started?
Yeah.
We do the same. Absolutely.
You have to check it
Yes.
almost all the time because it's constantly changing with what we're getting zapped with.
And especially going out and about in the real world, I bring it everywhere. You go to the new pizza restaurant. Well, am I going to eat here more than once? And should I really stand in line at the post office today? And people don't give that any thought. And we always talk about secondhand phone. You might go into a place that might not have a cell tower looming over them, but you've got 50 people with their smartphones turned on. Same thing.
Right. Absolutely. I went to the bank that we bank at, and I knew there was a big tower out just a block away, and I was like, okay, let's measure in this bank. And honestly, I was expecting what was the case. They are shielded. Inside that building, it was such a low level, it was like Not even a problem.
Oh, interesting.
I went to a health food store nearby. Exactly the same situation. Big tower across the street. I go inside, healthy readings. Readings at the level of our home here after I've shielded.
But that must mean that they're not using Wi-Fi in that building.
You know, it depends how things are configured, but I would say that they've shielded and they have, in fact, probably energy-absorbing, radiation-absorbing paint, and so they're deliberately damping down the signal because cell phones can operate at a level about 1 million times less what we're being bombarded with.
Exactly.
So you can absorb, 99% of what's around, and your phone will still work.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the phone service.
Yeah. It probably has to do with, I mean, if they have a window in line with the tower, then they're going to get it through the window. But I've noticed that a commonly used building material, like you said before, it's like a foil backing on a process they use in siding. There's like a foam core that has a foil back on it. There's also insulation that's foil backed, and it's been commonly used in the past with no thought given to shielding from microwaves, but it's a foil nonetheless. And if a home or a building has that inside the walls, then it is a really good shielding material.
It is, and if only people knew, and it's not that expensive. I mean, for example, let's say you have a wall, and that's one of the walls that's dosing your whole house. There's nothing stopping you from buying building material that has that foil backing or putting a foil backing on. Stick it up, another layer on top of your wall, fill it in, paint it over.
Yep.
You get all the benefits.
Yeah. Now, Floyd, when you look at fluoride and microwave radiation, we're looking at two things that drastically inhibit and harm the immune system. When you look at both of those factors combined, aren't we looking at a pretty toxic mix there? If you're ingesting fluoride and you're also being exposed to microwaves, I mean, what do you know about those two hazards combined together?
That's a good question. Everyone again should be thinking about that. It all works negatively. It all multiplies. I mean, just for me personally, just with microwaves, that was enough that I knew I was dying. I was literally dying. I was heading towards illness and disease. Fluoride by itself can do the same thing. Thyroid conditions are caused by fluoridation, for example, because your body needs iodine to regulate the thyroid, and then the fluoride preferentially reacts instead of the iodine, bottom line, thyroid problems. So imagine the two together. And, of course, I mean, there's other ones, right? There's mercury fillings and mercury in vaccines still, even though they continue to lie about it, it's still in vaccines. There's aluminum that people consume. There's cookware, right? Aluminum cookware still. It all works together negatively. And this is up to the individual to, use their common sense and go, hey, I sort of don't want to know exactly how it's hurting me. I just want to start getting rid of these threats one after another.
Yeah, I agree. I talked to a Dr. William Ray at the Environmental Health Center in Dallas, and they treat patients who have EMF symptoms and basically any kind of environmental toxins. And we had this conversation, and he said any toxin that's within your body, whether it's heavy metals, chemicals, mold, allergens, they are exacerbated by the high levels of EMF. So I think it's pretty safe to say that that's a potential cocktail. And I would also take it a step further, conversations I've been having with some physicians as well, is that even the medications and drugs that you're taking are going to react differently in a high EMF environment than they would
your
without.
body might not even uptake them in the manner that the drug was originally prescribed because of EMF exposure. Right.
I mean, drugs in themselves. By the way, if I can just do a shout out to naturalnews.com.
Oh, that's a great site. Yeah.
It's a great site that he covers all these subjects really well, and drugs themselves. If anyone is taking any medication, go and research.
Absolutely.
Because there's a good probability that your medication doesn't actually work, and they've been lying all along. But even if it is working, in quotes, it's working negatively in my books. When you start taking other poisons and toxins, how can this stuff possibly work together?
Right. And what about chemtrails?
Chemtrails, I guess I don't think that's any of that's true. But I don't have any information.
Have you looked up in the sky lately?
Again, we interviewed a gentleman, I think, who's Global Skywatch, and he is so sensitive, he can tell by the taste in his mouth what they are spraying. And then when they go out and test the soils, it shows that those are the higher levels at that time.
Well, I guess, I should come at it in reverse. This is part of when you get a bigger picture. You say, well, what would they gain from it, and how effective would it be for them? Like if I'm trying to hide, if I want to spray, mass medicate the population and put something really insidious out there, it could be a great way to do it. Just mix it in with the jet fuel or whatever, and everyone gets dosed evenly.
Well, actually, there's patents that you can find. The actual aerosol equipment is documented with patent numbers, and you can find that on the internet. Even the chemical cocktails they're using are patented, and they've got heavy metals like aluminum and barium and cadmium, among others. And just so you know, we were fortunate enough to come across a naturopathic doctor locally that knows all about that, and he has ways of testing to see if you have chemtrails in your body. And he takes rainwater samples frequently. And all of those chemicals that are found in the patents are found in our rainwater. So, I mean, there's physical proof right there. Plus, here in Ohio, we're right under some massive chemtrail patterns. Yeah, it's just constant. And if you look up the new turbofan jets, they don't leave contrails, the new ones. And you can look up and see that. You can see the jets that don't leave any, and then you can see the ones flying at lower altitudes, crisscrossing. And I even saw some recently that were leaving black plumes behind them. And two of them I saw on the same day. It was a day that they were just painted the sky, literally. And we looked on the internet and found out, Pat actually found it, that those black ones are called smokers. And it's a new technology they're testing, and I happened to see them. And the primary purpose is because their whole premise for doing this is to combat global warming. And that's all being debunked globally. They're saying that the temperatures really aren't changing. And what they're doing is they're using these smokers now to throw off the satellite data. So they're trying to give false readings now by spraying carbon-based chemtrails. And I personally just saw two of them over my head the other day. So I'm a believer. You got to see to believe it. You got to feel to believe it. Well, I believe the microwaves because I feel it. Now I believe the chemtrails because I see it. So
right. I think that as soon as you start to realize that the people in control of us don't have too many people on the planet from their point of view, as soon as you realize that, then you can draw a straight line through all of these various things. They all do the same thing. They shorten our lives. They're gonna depopulate us.
Yeah.
And there's many different ways they can do it, and I think they're using most of them.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk about little bits of honesty. Your websites with your quotes, I think, are just outstanding. So we're going to begin to wrap up. If you can share your websites with our listeners today and where we can find out more about you and what you do, that would be great.
All right, sure. Well, it's justthinkit.com with hyphens between the words. I came up with the name based on the Nike slogan, the famous slogan, "Just Do It." And I thought, just think it. This is an age where we have to think differently, and this is, we have to think for ourselves. So that was the origin of it. It's been going about 20 years. Like you say, my father was a quotes person. I always loved them. And then I just realized I like the idea of dispensing thoughts or dispensing wisdom. And I also think it's important that we should look at quotes daily. And so I publish daily, and I publish a lot daily, 45 a week. And I just think we need to be reminded frequently. I try and have original quotes, so it's not sort of like a nagging message. But, yeah, I just think it's a bit of a tonic. And I guess 6,000 others do as well.
I'd like to share one as we close because I think it's important. You say, have you picked your cause? Life isn't worth living without one. It is the thing we should be doing when we are playing video games or endlessly channel surfing. It could be trying to increase the minimum wage, working to rid the world of fluoridation, or coaching kids to enjoy sports, not just win them. So what is your cause? And so we'll leave our listeners with that. Huh?
Sounds good.
Yeah, and I like your coined term of being a truth distributor.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds good to me. I like that.
We got to make life a mission. We got to realize that it's up to us. We're on the front lines,
Yep.
whoever we are, and your life will become meaningful and it'll become good if you take an honest approach and just you stand up to things.
Absolutely. What a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, this has been great, Floyd.
Thank
Likewise.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and folks, go check out Floyd on the internet. Go to his websites, check him out on YouTube, and make sure to see that video, Microwaves a Wolf in Sheep's Clothing.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks, Floyd. Take care. God bless.
Well, thank you for joining us on Boil the Frog Slowly Radio. Please come back next week. And for more information, go to the website, boilthefrogradio.com. And until next week, remember to practice safe phone.
Boil the frog slowly, you're a frog in a pot. Turn up the heat and things will get hot. Will you jump out or will you burn? Listen to the show and you will return to Boil the Frog slowly.